If you're an entrepreneur or business owner out there and you're so focused on scaling, listen, stop chasing growth, chase clarity. Because understand, what you build is only as strong as the financial foundation that you build it on. And just because it makes good money, it's only as valuable as much as you can keep. So I recently watched a podcast episode with one of my favorite channels, Earn Your Leisure, and Pinky Cole, who is the founder of Slutty Vegan, which is a vegan chain restaurant. So in the video, Pinky talks about the success of her business and how she got to a point where she had to bring in outside money. You know, she raised $25 million for, I want to say, 25% equity stake in her company. And the company at the time was valued at $100 million business. Now, you got a $100 million value business and you just sold 25% of it for $25 million. You would think that's the dream, right? Like, that's what you're supposed to do with business. But as she continued to dive in with her story, and what came after that was a completely different outcome than I expected. So with that $25 million that she raised for that 25% equity stake, Pinky used that money to scale her business further. At the time, she had a few locations, and then she grew it to 14 locations. And from there, growth took off. She had new operations and new technology and new systems. Like, from the outside looking in, everything looked perfect. But here's the thing. With each one of those new locations, it was costing her upwards of $1 million in monthly expenses. And look, let me tell you, revenue does not equal profit. Just because the money was coming in, it wasn't staying. It was going right out to pay for the large amount of overhead that she had now gained with this new reinvestment and development of her business. So it was like, the bigger that she grew, the more that it cost to stay afloat. Why is that? Because when you raise capital and you bring in investors, you also raise expectations. And now the business that you once wholly owned is not yours. So it's not just your decisions that are going to be made to further that business even more. That's why you brought in investors. And during this large overhaul, what got overlooked was the numbers under the hood and the financial foundation of the business. And this is where I want to bring things into perspective for a second. Because what Pinky went through isn't a rare situation. It's just rarely talked about. Like, when you're in the thick of scaling your business, you're hiring, you're bringing in new operations and new systems, it's easy to miss the red flags. And you really don't become aware of these red flags until shit hits the fan. And as an entrepreneur, it then not just becomes about your business, it then affects your own wealth. Look, if Pinky's entire financial livelihood was tied up into the $100 million value of that business, which she now only owns 75% of, when that business takes any financial hit, so does her net worth. Now, I'm sure she has a diversified portfolio and has invested the money that she's made in that business in other places, but this can still be the large majority of her assets. So not only is her business and her net worth now taking a hit, but so is her financial security. And that's the trap I see a lot of business owners fall into. It's like, you pour so much into building a business and building something great that all it takes is one wrong decision, one wrong mistake, that you can then lose it all. And that's because most business owners are so overly concentrated in their business. It's majority of their portfolio. So when the business fails, when things aren't going right, it affects you directly. Now, I would definitely recommend you guys go watch the Earn Your Leisure episode, but what I want you guys to take away from my analysis of it is, revenue means nothing if your expenses are eating it alive. Ownership means nothing if you're not extracting the equity from it. And next time you hear about one of these multi-million dollar valuations, understand that's not actual money. That's just potential. And that's why it is critical to make sure you're on top of the financial management of your business as you're scaling, as you're growing. Not after, not when you get to a point and things slow down, and not when crisis happens and shit hits the fan. As you scale, you need systems to manage your money, not just inside the business, but outside of it as well. That means investments, cash flow strategies, like an actual financial plan. Because look, your business should be your asset that funds your wealth, not your liability that puts it at risk. And I just want to use Pinky's story as a lesson, because Pinky is an entrepreneur who I've looked up to since finding out about Slutty Vegan, learning her journey, watching her journey, and seeing her climb to the height of success. And then when you get to the peak of the mountaintop, you realize that there's still more climbing to do, and you have to adjust and learn new things when you get to the peak. Pinky's story is not a lesson of failure. It's a lesson and a reminder. A reminder that $100 million value business with broken financial systems is not an asset, it's a liability. But if you have a business with a strong financial structure and it's managed wisely, it can change your life. See y'all next time.